Have you ever noticed how you keep ending up in the same kind of heartbreak, even though the faces change? Different names, different voices, but the same familiar ache in your chest. It feels like a cruel joke, doesn't it? Like life keeps handing you the wrong person wrapped in the disguise of love. You tell yourself this time will be different. You promise yourself you've learned. And yet, here you are again, staring at the ruins of another almost love. Why does this happen? Why do you, someone with so much tenderness in your heart, always choose the one who cannot hold it? Why does your soul gravitate toward what will eventually hurt you? The truth is, it's not because you're foolish. It's not because you don't see the red flags. It's because somewhere deep inside, a younger version of you is still searching for something it never got. And so, without knowing, you keep running back to the same type of person, as if their absence might finally be rewritten into presence, as if their neglect might transform into love this time. I want you to imagine this: a child, standing in a doorway, waiting for someone to come back, waiting for warmth, waiting for safety, waiting for love that feels steady and unquestioned. That child is you. And every time you meet someone who stirs something familiar inside, you're not falling for them. You're falling for the memory of that doorway, the hope that maybe this time, someone will finally walk through it, but they don't. And the silence feels unbearable. I know how heavy that sounds. I know how exhausting it feels to believe you're cursed to repeat the same mistakes. But here's the secret. The moment you see the pattern, the moment you recognize the younger you at the center of it, the cycle starts to break. You are not doomed to choose the wrong person forever. You've just been carrying unhealed echoes of your past into the present. And the fact that you are here, listening now, tells me you're ready to set that child free. So, stay with me. Because together, we're going to peel back the layers of why you chase what you chase, why you silence yourself just to feel safe, and why you confuse love with survival. And when you begin to see it clearly, you will no longer be at the mercy of it. If you've ever whispered to yourself, "Why do I always pick the wrong one?" then this conversation is meant for you. Take a deep breath with me. Let's walk into this truth together, step by step, tenderly, carefully. And as we go, if something in these words touches your heart, if you feel seen in a way you've been craving for a long time, I invite you to stay connected, subscribe, share, keep this space alive. Because you deserve to be reminded that you are not alone in this. There's something strange about the way we are drawn to what hurts us. You would think the mind, so protective, would avoid the same kind of pain again. Yet, the heart doesn't work like that. It isn't logical, it is deeply familiar. And familiarity is seductive even when it wounds us. That's why you find yourself sitting across from someone who feels like home, only to realize later that home was never safe to begin with. Think back to the first time you felt unseen. Maybe it was in childhood, when you had to be quieter than you wanted, smaller than you really were. Maybe it was when you realized love came with conditions. Behave this way, achieve this, don't upset them. And so, a seed was planted inside of you. Love means striving, love means chasing, love means earning. And without even knowing, you carried that seed into adulthood. You meet someone who mirrors that old wound, distant, inconsistent, hard to reach, and suddenly it feels alive again. It feels like love. But it isn't love. It's survival dressed up as devotion, and this is why you always ask yourself after the tears and the heartbreak, why did I let it happen again? It's not weakness. It's recognition. Somewhere inside, you mistake the ache for passion, the anxiety for chemistry, the inconsistency for proof that this must be real, because why else would it hurt this much? That confusion keeps you locked in a cycle, one you don't even realize you've been repeating. There's something you need to hear. The wrong person will always feel magnetic, not because they're right for you, but because they awaken a part of you that's still unfinished. That's why someone healthy, someone steady, might feel boring at first. You're not used to peace, you're used to chaos. And your body has been trained to confuse chaos with intimacy. So, let's sit with that. Let's breathe into the discomfort of realizing you have been searching not for love, but for repair. You've been hoping that by choosing someone who reminds you of the past, you could rewrite it. But love isn't supposed to feel like a test you keep failing. It isn't supposed to leave you gasping for crumbs of attention, wondering if you're enough. Love, real love, feels like rest. It feels like a place where you don't have to perform. And maybe, right now, you don't even know what that feels like. Maybe part of you resists the idea because it seems too foreign. But that's okay. You don't have to rush. You just have to begin noticing. Notice the way you feel around the wrong person tight in your chest, always questioning, never grounded. Notice the way peace feels strange when someone genuinely cares for you. This awareness is where healing starts. Because the truth is, you've never been choosing the wrong person on purpose. You've been choosing the person who feels like your unfinished story. And the moment you see that clearly, the story begins to change. There comes a moment in every pattern where silence feels louder than the noise. You know that feeling, the quiet after another fight, another night staring at your phone, waiting for a reply that never comes. The silence presses down on your chest until you wonder if you've made it all up, if you were ever really loved at all. And in that moment, your heart whispers something you rarely admit out loud. Maybe you've been trying to love people who were never capable of giving it back, but still, you hold on. Why? Because letting go feels like failure. Because if you release them, it means you're left with yourself. And that's the scariest part. The truth is, choosing the wrong person isn't about them. It's about the fear that without them, you might have to face the emptiness inside. And so you cling. You bend, you shrink, you wait for scraps, because a little bit of warmth feels safer than none at all. And yet, hasn't that cost you too much? Hasn't that stolen your laughter, your sleep, your softness? Hasn't it left you feeling like you're always begging for love you should never have had to beg for? That exhaustion you carry isn't weakness. It's your soul telling you that this cycle cannot continue. Here's what's often hidden. When you're drawn to someone who cannot love you, you're not actually choosing them, you're choosing the hope they awaken in you. The hope that maybe this time, someone will finally stay. Maybe this time, you won't be abandoned. Maybe this time, you'll be chosen. And that hope keeps you tethered long past the moment you should have walked away. But look closer. Do you see how every wrong person leaves you with the same wound? How every goodbye slices through the same tender place inside? That's not a coincidence. That is your soul pointing to what has been waiting to be healed. And until you pause, until you sit with that younger version of yourself, the one who learned that love meant reaching, not resting, you will keep running into the same brick wall. The ache you feel, that hollow space in your chest, isn't proof that you're unlovable. It's proof that you've been chasing love in the places it was never meant to be found. And though it feels unbearable, this realization is a gift. Because now, for the first time, you can stop asking, why do I keep choosing the wrong person? And begin asking, what part of me still believes this is the only love I deserve? Take a breath with that question. Let it linger, because the answer will change everything. There's a kind of grief that lingers, even when the relationship has long ended. You know, the one, the way your chest tightens when you remember their smile, the way your body betrays you when a song plays, the way you still reach for your phone, almost against your will. It feels like a ghost moving through your life, reminding you of everything you gave and didn't get back. And maybe the most painful part is not that they left, but that you stayed too long, hoping your love would be enough to fix what was broken. But here's the raw truth. You cannot love someone into becoming whole. You cannot pour yourself out endlessly and expect that it will finally make them choose you. The wrong person will always take your devotion and reflect back absence. And yet you stayed, didn't you? Not because you didn't see the cracks, but because you thought leaving meant giving up. You thought leaving meant you weren't strong enough. But staying in a love that diminishes you is not strength. Sometimes, the truest courage is walking away with empty hands, trusting that emptiness will one day fill with something real. Think about the first moments of your last heartbreak. How you replayed every conversation, every silence, every glance, as if searching for the exact moment where it all began to unravel. That endless loop in your mind wasn't about them. It was about you, desperately trying to rewrite the story, trying to find the sentence, the word, the gesture you could have changed to make them stay. But love doesn't work like that. Love isn't kept alive by your performance, by your endless sacrifice. Love, real love, sustains itself. And maybe you've confused suffering with devotion for so long that peace feels unfamiliar. Maybe you believe love should hurt, should keep you on edge, should make you prove yourself over and over. But hear me. Love is not supposed to leave you doubting your worth. Love is not supposed to feel like an exam you're destined to fail. Love is the place where you can exhale. If this feels heavy, let it. Don't rush past it. Let the grief of all the wrong choices sit in your chest. Because that grief is not punishment, it's cleansing. It's the breaking of old illusions. Every wrong person you've held onto was not a waste. They were a mirror, showing you where you still believed love meant chasing, where you still thought you had to earn your place. And now, as painful as it is, you're seeing clearly. The pattern is no longer invisible. And when you can see it, you can begin to step out of it. It's strange, isn't it? How the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. You move on. You tell yourself you're healed. And then suddenly you meet someone new. They smile a certain way. They withdraw just enough to make you reach. And instantly your heart leaps as if it's found something rare. But it isn't rare. It's familiar. That spark you mistake for destiny is really recognition. Your body is saying, I know this. I've been here before. And so you fall not into love, but into repetition. The truth is, the wrong person often feels like the one because they stir your oldest wounds. They recreate the landscape of your childhood heart. The waiting, the pleasing, the proving. That's why the attraction feels so powerful. It's not random, it's patterned. And until you recognize that pattern, until you pause and ask yourself, am I drawn to this because it's safe or because it's familiar? You'll find yourself stuck in the same story, just with different names. But let's imagine something else for a moment. Imagine you meet someone who doesn't ignite that dizzy rush, who doesn't make your chest tighten with anxiety, who doesn't keep you guessing. Instead, they are steady. They show up when they say they will. They speak plainly. They don't leave you stranded in silence. And yet, part of you recoils. You tell yourself they're boring, that the chemistry is missing. But is it really missing? Or is it simply unfamiliar? You've lived in storms for so long that calm feels unnatural. And this is where the deeper work begins. It's not about blaming yourself for the wrong choices. It's about asking, what would it take to let peace feel like love? What would it take to let consistency stir your heart instead of chaos? Because when you can begin to soften into that, you stop chasing ghosts. You stop trying to heal old wounds through new lovers. And slowly you learn that love doesn't have to be dramatic to be real. I know this isn't easy. I know there's a part of you that still aches for the intensity, the fire, the chase. But pause for a moment and ask yourself, hasn't that fire always burned you? Haven't you always walked away from it scorched, carrying ashes instead of warmth? The love you've been looking for won't come from the familiar flames. It will come from the steady glow, the quiet flame that doesn't flicker when the wind blows. And maybe, just maybe, you are finally ready to recognize it. There's a tender kind of loneliness that comes when you realize how many years you've spent giving your heart to the wrong hands. You look back and see yourself at 20, at 25, at 30, pouring everything you had into people who couldn't even hold a fraction of it. And it hurts. It hurts not just because of them, but because you see now how often you abandoned yourself just to avoid being abandoned by someone else. You silenced your truth so you wouldn't scare them away. You shrank your needs so you wouldn't be called too much. You stayed in situations where your tears went unnoticed, where your joy was half celebrated, where your presence was never fully met. And you told yourself that maybe this was normal, that maybe all love looked like this. But deep down, you knew something was missing. You knew the love you were fighting so hard for shouldn't feel like you were starving all the time. And yet, you stayed. Not because you didn't see it, but because leaving meant facing yourself. Because in the quiet of your own company, the echoes of childhood would come rushing back, the same ache, the same fear, the same question, am I enough? So instead, you chose the distraction of loving the wrong person, thinking it was easier than facing that silence. But in truth, it wasn't easier. It was just more familiar. There's a gentle but powerful truth here. Every wrong choice wasn't a failure. It was a lesson pointing you home. Every heartbreak wasn't proof of your unworthiness. It was a reminder of the wound you've been carrying all along. And though it may feel unbearable, this pattern has been guiding you, slowly, painfully, toward the realization that the love you've been begging for has to begin inside of you. Because here's the shift. Once you learn to sit with your own heart, To comfort that child in the doorway who's still waiting, you will no longer need to beg someone else to do it for you. Once you recognize that you are already enough, you won't mistake inconsistency for passion. You won't confuse silence with safety. You will look at the wrong person and feel nothing but clarity. Clarity that this is no longer the story you're willing to live. And in that moment, the pattern breaks. Not because the world changes, but because you finally do. Do you remember the first time someone made you feel like you had to earn their love? Maybe it was a parent who only smiled when you achieved, who turned cold when you failed. Maybe it was a caregiver who gave affection on good days and vanished on bad ones. Maybe it was silence, so thick and heavy that you learned to tiptoe just to keep the peace. Whatever it was, that was the moment your heart learned a dangerous lesson. That love is conditional. That love means performing. That love means fighting to be enough. And so, as an adult, when you meet someone who makes you feel that same way, your body doesn't resist, it leans in. Because deep down, you've been wired to believe that if you can just win this person over, if you can just prove yourself here, it will finally undo the ache of those early years. But it never does it? It only deepens the wound, and still, you keep trying. Here's the truth that's hardest to accept. You are not choosing the wrong person because you are broken. You are choosing them because your heart is still trying to rewrite its oldest story. The child who once longed for love is still reaching through you, still hoping that maybe this time, someone will finally stay. And until you pause, until you turn back and tend to that child within you, the pattern will repeat. But healing doesn't begin with pushing that child away. Healing begins with sitting down beside them, listening to the ache they've been carrying for so long, and whispering words they've been desperate to hear. You are enough. You don't have to beg. You don't have to chase. Love is not earned. It is given. It feels strange at first, doesn't it? To give yourself what you've been searching for in others. To stop running after people who withhold, and instead, to practice giving yourself the very tenderness you crave. But slowly, something shifts. You start recognizing red flags not as challenges to overcome, but as signs you no longer need to ignore. You start seeing calm, steady love not as boring, but as the safety you've been starving for all along. And one day, you wake up and realize you don't ache for the wrong person anymore. You don't crave the chaos. You don't mistake inconsistency for passion, because you've built a home inside yourself. And from that home, you can finally welcome someone who knows how to stay. There's a quiet strength that comes when you finally stop chasing. At first, it feels like emptiness, like something is missing, like you've lost the spark that used to pull you into love's fire. But slowly, that emptiness turns into space. Space for breath. Space for peace. Space for a love that doesn't demand you break yourself to fit into it. You start to notice how different life feels when you are not anxiously waiting for a text, not deciphering mixed signals, not twisting yourself into shapes that make you unrecognizable. At first, it feels uncomfortable, even boring. But then it begins to feel like relief. The same way your shoulders drop when you realize you no longer have to carry a weight you thought was permanent. That relief is what real love feels like. It's not the drama, not the endless guessing. It's the soft landing, the steady ground, the place where your heart can finally rest. And yet, there's often resistance. Part of you misses the chase. Part of you misses the intensity, the dizzying highs and lows. Because that chaos felt alive, even though it hurt. But you must ask yourself, alive at what cost? Was it really love, or was it simply adrenaline, born out of fear and longing? That rush was never proof of connection, it was the body's response to uncertainty. And uncertainty is not the same thing as love. Real love is quieter, but it is deeper. It's not the wildfire that burns everything down. It's the hearth that keeps you warm through the night. And perhaps for the first time, you're ready to let yourself feel it. Because you've learned the hardest lesson of all. Love that requires you to suffer isn't love, it's a wound reenacting itself. And love that grows in safety, in mutual care, in peace, that is the love that heals. So pause here with me. Feel into that possibility. Imagine what it would be like to no longer ask, why do I always choose the wrong person? But instead to say, with quiet certainty, I know how to choose differently now. Because the truth is, you can. The pattern doesn't own you anymore. The past doesn't own you anymore. You have begun to own yourself, and from that place, the whole story changes. Maybe this is the part you never thought you'd reach, the point where you look at your old patterns and feel compassion instead of shame. You see the version of yourself who stayed too long, who begged for love, who confused survival with intimacy, and instead of judging them, you whisper, "I understand why you did that. You were just trying to be loved." That moment of tenderness towards your own past is the very thing that begins to dissolve its hold on you. Because healing doesn't come from hating the parts of yourself that got lost, it comes from bringing them home. Every wrong person you chose wasn't proof that you were broken. They were proof that you were still searching. Searching for the warmth you deserved all along, searching for the steady arms you never had, searching for the safety that was missing when you needed it most. And though it hurt, though it scarred you, those searches taught you something invaluable, what you will no longer accept. When you look back now, you begin to notice the small ways you've already changed. The text you didn't send, the silence you didn't break, the red flag you didn't excuse. Those are not small victories, they are revolutions. They are the signs that you are no longer willing to betray yourself for the sake of someone else's attention. And that shift, quiet as it is, changes everything. The wrong person might still try to call your name. They might still appear, with all the old charm, the familiar pull, the promises that feel so tempting. But this time you see clearly. You don't fall into the trance, because the spell has been broken by your own awareness. You've outgrown the version of yourself who needed to chase what could never stay. And so, when you ask now, why do I always choose the wrong person? You realize the answer is softer than you thought. You did it because you were longing for home, but the home you were searching for was never in them. It was always in you. Take a deep breath. Let that truth settle. The doorway where you once stood waiting is no longer empty because you've walked through it yourself. And now, finally, you are free to open it to someone who knows how to remain. There will come a day when you meet someone who doesn't awaken the chaos inside you, who doesn't trigger the panic of being abandoned, who doesn't make you feel like you're standing on a fragile edge. And at first, it may unsettle you. You'll search for the storm, for the drama, for the ache that once defined love in your heart. But all you'll find is steadiness. And maybe for a moment you'll wonder, is this really love? Or have I mistaken comfort for connection? But as time passes, you'll notice how your body responds differently. No more holding your breath waiting for them to choose you. No more late nights replaying every word, every silence, like a puzzle you can't solve. Instead, you'll notice something unfamiliar: ease. And ease, though it feels strange at first, will begin to feel like the very thing you've been searching for. Because love isn't supposed to be a battlefield where you prove your worth. Love is supposed to be the place where you remember it. The wrong people taught you exhaustion. The right one will teach you rest. And in that rest, you'll rediscover parts of yourself that you thought were gone forever. The laughter that spilled out of you without fear. The softness you tucked away to protect yourself. The dreams you once silenced because they felt too fragile. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you finally stop trying to fix what is unfixable in others, when you stop bending yourself into shapes to make someone stay, you will attract those who already know how to hold you. The steady ones, the kind ones, the ones who do not confuse distance with desire or cruelty with passion. They will not feel like fire. They will feel like home. And this time, home will not hurt. So let this sink in. You are not cursed. You are not broken. You are not destined to keep choosing the wrong person. You are simply repeating a story you inherited. And now, you are the one who gets to write a new ending. And when that day comes, when you stand beside someone who chooses you with ease, you'll look back on the past and whisper to yourself, I finally understand. I wasn't searching for them, I was searching for me. There's a quiet kind of triumph in reaching this place, the point where your heart no longer leaps for the ones who leave you guessing, where silence no longer feels like safety, where you can stand in front of someone who once would have unraveled you, and instead of falling apart, you feel a stillness inside. That stillness is not indifference, it's healing. It's the proof that you no longer confuse hunger with love. You start to see it everywhere. In the way you walk away from conversations that drain you. In the way you no longer shrink to keep someone else comfortable. In the way you no longer beg to be chosen. This isn't bitterness, it's freedom. It's the quiet recognition that the love you deserve is not something you have to chase. It's something that meets you halfway. And maybe for the first time, you begin to believe that love can be simple. Not without effort, not without care, but simple in its essence. Two people showing up for each other. Two people choosing, again and again, not because they have to, but because they want to. No games, no power struggles, no endless waiting at the door. Just presence, just devotion, just love. It's a different kind of fire, the steady flame that warms instead of burns. And in that warmth, you find yourself softening, letting down walls you once thought were permanent, because now it feels safe to be seen, safe to be held, safe to be you. And here's the truth that may feel both terrifying and liberating. You were never searching for the one. You were searching for the version of yourself who knew she deserved love that stays. And now that you've found her, everything changes. So if you've ever wondered why you always chose the wrong person, let this be the answer. Because you hadn't yet come home to yourself. And now that you have, the story will never be the same. Take a breath. Let the weight of that settle. And as you move forward, carry this with you. You are worthy of the kind of love that feels like rest, the kind that doesn't hurt, the kind that stays. Thank you for walking through this with me. If these words have touched you, if they've echoed something you've felt but never said, I invite you to keep this connection alive. Share this with someone who needs it. Hold on to it when the old patterns call your name, and stay close. Because healing is not meant to be done alone, and neither is love.